कृष्ण हरे हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे
Okay, let's get started today. Hari Om.
सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावतीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। गीता ध्यानम्। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितं पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनी अम्ब त्वामनुसन्धधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी। नमोऽस्तुते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्रा येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवैत्रेकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दुग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। वसुदेवसुदं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोत्तीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरननडी कैवर्तककेशव पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटम् नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाबोधितम्। लोके सज्जन षट्परैरहरहः तेऽपीयमानं बुधा भूयात् भारत पंकजं कलिमला प्रध्वंसिन श्रेयसे। मूकं करोति वाचालं Pangum Langayate Girim Yatkripatamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavai Vede Sangapadakramopaniषदे गायन्ति यं सामगा ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुः सुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः
Thank you, Hari Om. So we saw last time that Arjuna surrenders to Sri Krishna, and he does that because he feels that his problem is unique and he will not be able to solve it by himself. At the same time, he does not want to take independent action. He had this thing of we are in it together, and he wants to follow Sri Krishna. Whether outside the battlefield, if he had to run away, or whether he had to stay back and fight, he wanted Sri Krishna to be with him, and he wanted to be with Sri Krishna. And he not only feels that or felt that he was incapable, but he has an immense faith or Shraddha, which is one of the Sham Adi Shakta Sampattis that we talked about. He had immense Shraddha in Sri Krishna. He also does not or is not looking for a solution from the Artha perspective. Remember, we talked about Purusharthas. Artha is where you are looking at things which you need for your survival, for your enjoyment. So he is not looking for the kingdom. Neither is he looking at a solution from the Dharma perspective, or what his duty is. He seems to say that I know my duty. But he is looking for a solution which is much deeper, which is at the grassroots level, which is beyond the Artha, which is beyond the Dharma. And then he surrenders to Sri Krishna. Pujya Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda, he had a very beautiful line. He said, he who submits to discipline is a disciple. So discipleness requires a lot of discipline. And here Arjuna was prepared to, or is prepared to, submit to the discipline. And then he says, Shadimam, you instruct me, he says to Sri Krishna. And Tvam Prapannam, I surrender to you, I surrender to thee. And then we saw that Bhagavan, who is all-knowing, the Sarvagyani, Govinda is the context that we referred to him, or the name that Sanjaya gave him in this context. And the all-controlling, or Sarva Shakti, where he was referred to as Rishikesha. And that Bhagavan, who is all-knowing and all-controlling, he then starts his teaching. And what did he do? He did this essentially by initially imparting Sankhya. Sankhya is nothing but the knowledge that comprises of Atma Vidya and Swadharma Vidya. Atma Vidya is the knowledge about the self, and Swadharma Vidya is knowledge about the duty. And then after that, we saw that he will be imparting the yoga or the technique with which to conduct the duties. And we are currently in the Atma Vidya portion of the chapter. He starts by giving clarity that one should not identify with either the body or the mind. He talks about the body in verses 12 and 13, and he talks about the mind in verses 14 and 15. And there we saw a very beautiful depiction of Sanskrit, where it came out that it is not that we are not there, the double negative, and it is not that we shall not be there. And one who has discovered herself or himself, and in herself or himself a mental equipoise, a calm endurance, titiksha. He talks about, Sri Krishna says, calm titikshasva bharata. That's also one of the Shamadhi, Shakta Sampattis that we read about. The endurance, endure this and endure it gamely. Endurance with dignity of the travails and tribulations that are presented to us. That calm endurance, that mental equipoise. And once that person has discovered this in herself or himself, then that person is fit for attaining immortality. This is what we saw last time. Now we will continue. We will read verse 16.
नासतो विद्यते भावो
Nasato vidyate bhavo
नाभावो विद्यते सतः
na bhavo vidyaste sataha
उभयोरपि दृष्टोऽन्तः
ubhayorapi drishtonta
स्वानन्योस्तत्त्वदर्शिभिः
tvanayo tattvadarshibhihi.
नासतो विद्यते भावो नाभावो विद्यते सतः उभयोरपि दृष्टोऽन्तः स्वानन्योस्तत्त्वदर्शिभिः.
So we see that this verse, the first line of this verse begins with Nasat, Asat, and the last word is Sat. Sat means that which always exists, that which is real. And Asat means that which is non-existent, that which is unreal. Most of the experience or most of the existence that we see all around us, those are all limited, and we did talk about this earlier, limited by the space, limited by time, and limited by physical object or being. Desha, Kala, Vastu, Parichinna. Parichinna means conditional or limited. And all existence is conditional to these three elements: space, time, and object. So anything that we see, either it begins in a particular point in time, ends in a particular point in time. It exists in a particular sphere of space. And it is bound by either a physical object, or for example, a glass of water. The water is bound by the glass, or it is bound by space, or it is bound by something or the other. So the body, the mind, and the intellect are bound by all three: Desha, Kala, Vastu, the space, time, and the object. The body, mind, and intellect are bound by all three. And because they are bound by all three, they are unreal. They are not real. Asat, they are asat. And then Sri Krishna says, Na bhavo, that which is limited, that is absent. It does not have any bhava. Anything that cannot be independently shown and demonstrated is an apparent existence. It is mithya. In Sanskrit, it is called mithya. A lot of the apparent existence has been shown by science. For example, for a number of years, people believed that the earth is flat. Okay, but science was able to demonstrate that the earth is not flat. Till then, it was, the belief that it was flat. We know this concept of mirage. When you see a mirage, you see it as a real existence, only to discover when you go closer to it that it is not there. So this apparent or non-existent is things that we see all around us, that we also recognize, and there is a lot that we do not relate to. For example, the soul. Sometimes we may not be able to relate to it. And then Bhagavan Sri Krishna says that those who know the truth, Tattva Darshibhihi, the people who can see the truth, the knowers of the truth, they are called Jnana Chakshu, which means everything. Jnana is knowledge, Chakshu is eyes that can see everything. Those people, they can effectively and surely distinguish between what is apparent and what is real. And of the two, which is what? The Sat and the Asat. Ubhayo. Ubhayo means of the two. Of the two, that is Sat and Asat, Drishtontaha, can see or know which is the real. The people who are knowledgeable. So that which was not in the past, which did not exist in the past and will not be there in the future, but it seemingly exists in the present, is called the unreal. And what is non-existent in the beginning, completely not there in the beginning, not there in the end, and is non-existent in the middle also, because this is apparent. In real terms, it is non-existent. It is what Bhagavan is trying to imply here, that it is only apparently existing in the middle. In real terms, in the realm of reality, it is, this existence is also unreal. For example, when you have a dream and when you wake up out of the dream goes away. It's not there in the existence or in the realm of our life. It was there in some other dream. While it happened, it seemed extremely real. But when we are out of it, it is completely unreal. But for anything that to exist, for a changeless substratum is required. For any of these apparent things to exist and move on, something that is solid and changeless is required behind that existence. For example, for a river to flow in its mighty manner, whatever kind of flow it may have, whether it has a flow which is, rough in the terrain, depending on the terrain, or very soft and smooth, depending on the terrain, it requires that river bed, which is the changeless substratum. On that river bed, the river flows. Similarly, something that holds together the infinite experiences of the body, mind, and intellect is the self. And the self is that changeless substratum on which the body, mind, and intellect flows through these infinite experiences that we have in our life. And in order to make it wholesome experience for all of us, this changeless real called the self is there behind the body, the mind, and the intellect. That is what Sri Krishna is trying to say here, to teach here. We'll go to the next verse.
Avinashi tu tad viddhi.
Avinashi tu tad viddhi.
Yena sarvamidam tatam.
Yena sarvamidam tatam.
Vinasham avyayasyasya.
Vinasham avyayasyasya.
Na kaschit kartumarhati.
Na kaschit kartumarhati.
Avinashi tu tad viddhi. Yena sarvamidam tatam. Vinasham avyayasyasya. Na kaschit kartumarhati.
Yena sarvam idam tatam. That means that element which pervades everything, which is all pervading. That all pervading tadviddhi, please know that this all pervading element is Avinashi. Avinashi means indestructible. So that all pervading element is, and please know, Bhagavan is saying, is indestructible. And then he says, na kaschit kartum arhati. No one can cause what? The vinasham, or the destruction of that which is avyayasyasya, which is imperishable. That which is imperishable, nobody can destroy it, which is that self, the underlying substratum on which the body, mind, and intellect have these infinite experiences. So that it pervades everything, it is indestructible, and nobody can cause its destruction. When I was reading this, I was reminded of, there is this Bollywood movie. It's a very often oft quoted example in Vedanta, of the mud, the pots that are there, whether pot carry water, or it's, there's a flower in it, or it may be one of those exquisite vases. All of them are made of mud. And there was this Bollywood movie, where, there's the heroine, the actress, she breaks an exquisite vase. She's basically a helper in the house, and she breaks an exquisite vase. And, the master of the house is standing there very annoyed, and she's like, Gamla Tutya. Gamla means the ordinary pot in which, the plant is grown. and she calls it Gamla, the exquisite, crazily expensive pot, she says, is Gamla. Those of you who have seen the movie will recollect that. So whether it is that exquisite, expensive vase, or whether it is this ordinary mud pot on which we see a plant, or in which water is carried in the villages, all of them, are comprised of mud. And the mud is the reality that holds these pots together. And that is the substratum for all this existence, all of them, all different forms of pots that are there. Similarly, the body, mind, and the intellects, they also have this substratum that is holding. And whatever pot it may be, when this exquisite, expensive vase broke, it went back to what? To earth, to mud. Similarly, the body, mind, and intellect comes from matter and goes back to matter. So, while this happens for the body, mind, and intellect, which is apparently there, what is the substratum? That nothing can happen, and neither can it be destroyed, and it is indestructible. We'll go to verse 18.
Antavanta ime deha
Antavanta ime deha
nityasyuktaha sharirinaha
nityasyukta sharirinaha
anashino prameyasya
anashino aprameyasya
tasmadyutyasva bharata
tasmadyudhyasva bharata.
antavanta ime deha nityasyukta sharirinaha anashino prameyasya tasmadyutyasva bharata.
So these bodies, the mind and the intellect, all of them have an end. Antavanta means they are all naturally perishable. And that which is beyond the body, sharirin, sharirinaha, sharirin, that is said to be everlasting, ukta nitya. So the body, mind, and intellect are naturally perishable, they are antavanta, and the sharirin, that is beyond the body, mind, and intellect, they are ukta nitya, which are everlasting. And they are also avinasho, and they are aprameyasya. Avinasho prameyasya. That means avinasha means indestructible, and aprameyasya means incomprehensible. Something that we cannot comprehend. A beautiful example for something that can be comprehended versus not is, we are saying that the body, mind, and intellect is physical, you can see it, feel it, experiences, you can comprehend it. The self is incomprehensible. Similarly, we all know that all around us, as we are sitting where we are sitting, there is electricity around us, there is charge, right? But do we feel that? We don't see that. It's incomprehensible. We don't feel, but it is there. Science has proven that electricity is there around us. And when this electricity is harnessed and taken into a cable and 240 volts of it is passing through that, then you plug something in, it comes to life. You switch on the switch and the tube or the light comes in, starts glowing. So when you see a bulb, there are three elements to a bulb. If you look at a bulb light, you have that outer glass covering, and then there is this element, and in between the element and the glass is gas. And all three of these aspects, all three of these elements are something that you can perceive, you can see, you can feel, they are there. But if you drop the bulb, all of them are broken, they are gone. And if you drop the bulb and you leave it there for some time, it will merge into the earth. After some time, you will not even see, neither will you see the glass, nor will you see the element, nor will you see the gas. But when they are together, and when there is this unseen element that is passing through it, called the charge or the electricity, this bulb glows up. Similarly, the body, the mind, and the intellect, by their own, when they are there, they are inert. They are not there. The body, mind, and intellect will be lying on the ground, and after some time it will perish. It will merge into the earth. But when the self is harnessed and goes into the body, mind and intellect, like the bulb glows through electricity, the body, mind and intellect glows and comes into life. So this is something which is incomprehensible, which you cannot see, which you cannot perceive. And that is this self. And then Sri Krishna says, because of this, Bharata, O Bharata, get up and fight. We will move on to verse 19.
Ya enam veti hantaram
Ya enam veti hantaram
yaschainam manyate hatam
yaschainam manyate hatam
ubhau tau na vijanito
ubhau tau na vijanito
nayam hanti na hanyate
nayam hanti na hanyate.
ya enam veti hantaram yaschainam manyate hatam ubhau tau na vijanito nayam hanti na hanyate.
So Bhagavan is saying here that anyone who thinks of the self as the slayer, or who thinks of the self as the slain, either the killer or the killed, he does not know, he knows not. So in this case, the slayer and the slain is because of the context of Arjuna. He is the one who has said, I cannot fight, I cannot kill. So Bhagavan is using this. But this holds true for anything that we do, for all our activities. For example, right now I am speaking, you are listening. So if I think of the self as that I am speaking, and if you think of yourself as you are listening, we do not know, is what Bhagavan is saying here. So the body, the body, mind and intellect, it is said that it goes through 6 modifications. It is the 6 modifications that the body, mind and intellect goes through are called the Shad Vikaras. Shad means 6 and Vikaras means modifications. The first one is Jayate. Jayate means is born. The second is Asti. Asti is exit, it exists. Then Vardate, which means it grows. The fourth one is Viparinamate, which means it modifies. The fifth one is Apakshiyate, which means it decays. And the sixth one is Vinashyati, which means it dies. So 6 modifications: Jayate, Asti, Vardate, Viparinamate, Apakshiyate and Vinashyati. Vinashyati is also referred to as Mriyate. That means it dies. So you must write down these points, these words. And if you don't have the time to write down now, I am sending you the notes. My request to you is that please look at the notes and write it down again. These are part of the Sanskrit English dictionary that I talked about earlier. So please include these words in your Sanskrit dictionary, and they are all very relevant. And it helps to write down. For example, one of the reasons why I write down the notes and send it to you is because when I write it down, it's a fantastic revision for me. So I will encourage all of you to write it down, not just keep my notes and read through them aside. Whenever you have time, please find time to write it down. So the 6 modifications are something that the body, mind and intellect go through. The death of a previous condition and the birth of a new condition is nothing but change. Okay? Any change that you may see is, for example, when we completely saw that traffic in the streets had stopped, it was the death of the previous condition where there was traffic. And the birth of the new condition was a street without traffic. Similarly, the body, mind and intellect goes through this process, through this modifications. And the last 2 aspects of those are the death and the birth. And that is the constantly changing aspect, of what we perceive. In fact, one of my bosses used to say that change is not the only constant. He used to say the constantly changing pace of change is the only constant. So the self, though, is free of all these modifications. It is not touched by these modifications, is what Bhagavan has told us here. We'll go to verse 20.
न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचित्
न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचित्
नायं भूत्वा भाविता वा न भूयः
नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः
अजो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो
अजो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो
न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे
न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे
न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचित् नायं भूत्वा भाविता वा न भूयः अजो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे.
This is a very interesting verse actually. It's a very, very interesting verse when we dive into it. Kadachit means never. That's the last word of the first line, kadachit. Na bhutva means not being there. Bhavita means will be there. And na bhuyaha means not again. So birth is not being there and then coming into being. Death is being there and then ceasing to be. So what is not there and then comes into being, it is the birth of that. And what is there and then ceases to be, it is the death of that. And what God is saying here is, never was the self not there and then came about. And never was the self there and then ceased to be. So the self is existent before birth and is existent after death. That is what God is telling us here. And therefore he says, Ajaha Nityaha Shashvate. Because of that, the self is Ajaha. Ajaha means unborn. Nitya means eternal. Shashvat means changeless. Aja Nitya Shashvat. And it's the vintage old Purana, ancient self. It is there forever. It has been there through ancient times. And even though Purana we saw earlier is Purana Api Nava. Although it is Purana, it is as good as new. So at any point of its existence, of this ancient aspect, it is as good as new. And na hanyate, it is not killed. And hanyamane sharire, which means when the body is killed, even then this self is not killed. So we talked about the 6 modifications of the Shadvikaras. This verse actually touches upon all 6 of them. Na jayate is basically talking about the first modification, which is jayate, born, and asti exists. Namriyate talks about vinashyati, the last modification, and viparinamate, which means modifies. Purana covers the vardate part of it, growing, something that grows. And Shashvat covers the apakshiyate, decaying part of it. So this self is nirvikara, which is free of all these modifications. We'll go to verse 21.
Veda vinashinam nityam
Veda vinashinam nityam
ya enam ajam avyayam
ya enam ajavavyayam
katam sapurusha partha
katam sapurusha partha
kam ghatayati hantikam.
kam ghatayati hantikam.
Veda vinashinam nityam ya enam ajam avyayam katam sapurusha partha kam ghatayati hantikam.
So avinasham is indestructible, nityam is eternal, ajam is unborn, avyayam is inexhaustible. We saw all of that. Veda means no. So one who knows that the self is birthless, deathless, changeless, indestructible, eternal, unborn, inexhaustible, that person, O Partha, such a person, katam kam ghatayati, means how can this person cause to be killed? How can you be a cause for a killing to occur? How can this person cause to be killed? And katham kam hanti, how can such a person kill? When you know that the truth behind the self. Neither does this person think of himself as the doer, nor does this person think of himself as the instigator. And why is that this person is able to be like this? Is because the person does not identify with the body, mind and intellect. The person identifies with the self, which is everlasting. Abhimana means identification. So the abhimana is not with the body, mind and intellect. And all the suffering comes not from the body, the mind and the intellect. All the suffering comes from the identification that we have from whatever we are suffering to, with respect to the body, mind and intellect. We'll go to verse 22.
Vamsasi jirnani yata vihaya
Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya
navani grahanati naroparani
navani grihnati naroparani
tata sharirani vihaya jirnani
tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani
anyani samyati navani dehe
anyani samyati navani dehi
Vamsamsi jirnani yata vihaya navani grahanati naroparani tata sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehe.
This is one of the most quoted verses, or the more quoted verses from the Bhagavad Gita. People often quote this, especially at the time of when passing away. This is one of the most quoted. So here Bhagavan is saying, just as a person casts off old worn out clothes and puts on new ones, so also the self which is embodied, which is in the body, that casts off its worn out bodies and takes on new ones. And mostly skeptics say that how is it then that young bodies also perish? They also die. People who don't have age, young, sometimes children pass away, right? The identification here, or the definition here in terms of the worn out, does not refer to the age of the body, mind and intellect. It refers to the purpose of the body, mind and intellect. Once a body has served the purpose for the self, then it is discarded by the self. It's like buying a new car when the old car can still be used and it's pretty running quite well. So that is what Bhagavan is saying here, that as we all discard things that have lived their purpose, similarly the self discards the body, the mind and the intellect once it has lived its purpose. We'll now go through we'll recite 3 verses together, 23, 24 and 25.
Nainam chindati shastrani
Nainam chindanti shastrani
Nainam dahati pavakaha
Nainam dahati pavakaha
Nachainam kledayantyapo
Nachainam kledayantyapo
Nashoshayati marutaha
Nashoshayati marutaha
Achedyoyamadahyayo
Achyedo yamadhakyayo
Akledyo shoshya evacha
Yamakledyo shoshya evacha
Nitya sarvagatasthano
Nityas sarvagatasthano
Achloyam sanatanaha
Achaloyam sanatanaha
Avyaktoyam achintyoyam
Avyaktoyam avyaktoyamachintyoyam
अविकारोऽयमुच्यते
avikaroyamuchyate
तस्माद् एवं विदित्वैनं
tasmadevamiditvainam
नानुशोचितुमर्हसि
nanushocitumarhasi.
नैनं छिन्दन्ति शस्त्राणि नैनं दहति पावकः न चैनं क्लेदयन्त्यापो न शोषयति मारुतः अच्छेद्योऽयमदह्यायो यम् अक्लेद्यो शोष्य एव च नित्यः सर्वगतस्तानुर् अचलोऽयं सनातनः अव्यक्तोऽयमचिन्त्योऽयम् अविकारोऽयमुच्यते तस्माद् एवं विदित्वैनं नानुशोचितुमर्हसि.
So here Bhagavan is going to the next level of saying, even if you identify with the body and I do not identify with the self, what is it that, and why is it that we are saying that the self does not go through the modifications that the body does? So he says that weapons are not able to cleave it. Cleave it means cut it. Weapons cannot cut the self. Fire burns it not. Water cannot wash it away. And wind cannot dry it up. So, when destruction, when it comes, it happens in the form of the 4 elements. Out of the 5 elements, the 5th one being space, the element of space is not involved in the process of destruction. The process of destruction, the 4 elements, which is the air, water, fire, and earth, they are the ones that are involved in the process of destruction. So weapons cleave it not. Weapons are built from earth. Any weapon that you see, even the modern day weapons are built from, most of them are from metal, which comes from the earth. So weapons cannot cleave it, which means the earth part of it cannot harm it. Fire cannot burn it. Water, what does water do when it destroys? It kind of comes in, washes things away, it melts, it disintegrates elements. When there is a flood, it disintegrates, whatever it may be. Even concrete structures can get disintegrated by the force of a tsunami, right? So water disintegrates and washes them away. And wind does the opposite. While water brings in the moisture and washes it away, wind dries it up completely and makes it brittle. So these 4 elements are the ones that are involved in destruction, and none of these 4 elements can impact the self. And then in the next verse, he says that the self cannot be cut. Achedyoya cannot be cut. Adaya cannot be burnt. Akledya, which means it cannot be washed away. And ashoshya, which means it cannot be dried. So the self is not impacted by the force of any of these 4 natural elements that can destroy. And why is that? Because these 4 elements essentially work through contact. Contact in Sanskrit is called samyoga. So when that samyoga or contact happens is when the destruction happens. And the self, essentially being non-material, is not contactable. Like I gave you the electricity example. And that is because the self is in a completely different realm. It's like when I talked about the dream, if we had dreamt of an unbelievable feast, let's say we slept hungry, didn't get proper dinner, slept hungry, and had the dream of a fantastic feast. And then we wake up. Does it remove the hunger? No. It was in a different realm altogether. So the self exists in a different realm. And in its realm, this ancient Sanatana, again Bhagavan refers to Sanatana. This ancient self is Nitya, Sarvagata. Nitya means eternal. Sarvagata means all-pervading. Sthanu is stable. And Achala means immovable. And then he says that this self is said to be unmanifest, which means it is avakyo yam. This yam is this, avakyo, unmanifest. Achintyo, unthinkable. And avikaryo, unchangeable. It is said to be uchyate. Therefore, knowing tasma devam, thus knowing this, viditvainam, having known, you should not be grieving. Shochitum arhasi. So, God is saying that once you know that this self is unmanifest, it is unthinkable, it is unchangeable, knowing this, you should not be grieving. So, it is not manifest means what? The senses cannot perceive it. It is not unthinkable means what? It cannot be cognized, it's not cognizable to the mind. So neither can the senses perceive it, nor can the mind be cognizant of the self. For example, sometimes when you are in the mountains or such similar places, you will see like a smoke coming out of the forest in the mountain. And looking at the smoke, you will say, oh my God, there is a forest fire that is coming in. I should alert the forest department. What have we seen? We have seen only the smoke. We don't know if there is a fire or anything. But the comprehension that we have, that helps us, or that makes us believe that there is a fire and we need to act on it. Whereas the self is neither can it be cognizable, nor is it perceivable. It's like we know the sun by its own light, not that of the torch. You can't shine a torch into the sun and say, hey, see, this is the sun. Not even the moon. They are seen by their own light. Similarly, the self is something that is perceived through awareness and not by the senses and the mind. The senses and the mind cannot perceive, cannot be cognizant of the self. It is a different element, it is a different aspect that helps us be aware of the self. And tasmadevam vidit vainam, knowing all of this, nashochitum arhasi, do not grieve. We will read verses 26 and 27.
Atachainam nityajatam
Atachainyam nityajatam
nityam tamanyasmritam
nityam va manyase mritam
tatapi tvam mahabaho
tathapi tvam mahabaho
naivam shocitum
arhasi
jatasya hidruvo mrityur
jatasya hridruvo mrityur
dhruvam janma mritasya cha
dhruvam janma mritasya cha
tasmad aparitharyarte
tasmad aparitharyarte
natvam shocitum
natvam shochitum arhasi.
atachainam nityajatam nityam va manyase mritam tatapi tvam mahabaho naivam shocitum jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur dhruvam janma mritasya cha tasmad aparitharyarte natvam shocitum arhasi.
So here Bhagavan is saying that he's telling Arjuna, even if you think of the self as being constantly born, constantly dying, of what? Of the self, not of the body, mind and intellect. Even if you think that the self is constantly born and constantly dying, even then you should not grieve. And he addresses Arjuna as, O mighty armed, Mahabaho. Mahabaho means, O mighty armed. And why is that? He says that the apparent self, there is this apparent self is called the Jivatma. So, we call the apparent self as the Jivatma. That is the embodied self. It is limited by the time, space, object aspects. And the real self is called the Paramatma. It is not embodied. It is not limited. For example, the sun is real, but the reflection of a sun in a lake is apparent. But the reflection of a sun in a lake also gives light. But it is an apparent existence. It is not a real existence. Similarly, the Paramatma is reflected in the mind of the Jivatma. The real self is reflected in the mind of the apparent self. And that is this conditioned I. When we say that I am sitting, I am talking, I am happy, I am sad, all these verbalizations are of the conditioned I. And birth and death are for this conditioned or for this apparent I, not for the real I. And even if you identify yourself with this apparent I, Arjuna, you should not grieve. And why should you not grieve? Then he goes to the next verse. He says, because jatasya, whatever is born, dhruvo, certain. What is certain for what of the born of whatever is jatasya? What is dhruvo of whatever it is born? What is certain? Mrityu, which is death. Death is certain for anything that is born. And for anything that dies, birth is certain. Of the dead, mrityascha, dhruvam janma. Birth is certain for whatever dies. Certain is death for whatever is born, and birth is certain for whatever dies. So, anyway, it is inevitable. So, why should you grieve? And because these are natural occurrences for the jiva, it is inevitable. So, please do not grieve. And then he goes on to say, verse 28.
Avyaktadini bhutani.
Avyaktadini bhutani.
Vyaktamadhyani bharata.
Vyaktamadhyani bharata.
Avyaktanidhanayeva.
Avyaktanidhananyeva.
Tatra ka paridevana.
Tatra ka paridevana.
Avyaktadini bhutani. Vyaktamadhyani bharata. Avyaktanidhananyeva. Tatra ka paridevana.
So bhutani are the beings. And what are they, bhutani? They are avyaktadini. Avyaktadini means they are unmanifest in the beginning. And the bhutani are also vyakta madhyani, manifest in the middle. Bharata, of course, he is referring to Arjuna, descendant of Bharata clan. So what is unmanifest in the beginning and manifested in the middle, and avyakta nidhanan yeva, unmanifest again in their end. So what is unmanifest in the end, unmanifest in the beginning, they kind of seem to be manifest in the middle. It is an apparent existence. So what is there to grieve about in this? So the beings come from the 5 elements, which is the air, the water, the earth, the space. The 5 elements make up the beings, the bhutani. And in the beginning they are not there. In the end they will not be there. In the middle they are perceived for a period of time, which is impermanent, which is transitory. So when this is the case, and when you know that this is the case, paridevana essentially means excessive display of sorrow. When somebody is like going out of the way to depict the sorrow. So why this paridevana? What is this need? What is the need for this excessive display of sorrow, Arjuna? Is what Bhagavan is asking. So essentially, he has talked about the self, which is not, or which exists in a realm which is not connected to the body, mind, and intellect existence, and because of which, because knowing which, getting to know which, we should accept, and once we accept, there is nothing to grieve, is what Bhagavan has covered today, is what we saw. So with this, we are done for today. So we will go to the shlokas.
Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.
Hari Om, thank you. So next session, next Saturday, will be one more of my favorite verses. I told you that verse 7 of chapter 2 is one of my favorite. I hope to complete till verse 38 next time, and that will be one of my favorite ones. So I will enjoy that. We actually go from learning about the Atman, Atma Vidya, to Swadharma Vidya, and yeah, that's very interesting, very interesting part of the Bhagavad Gita. So does anyone have any thoughts, comments?
Srini, as it's going deeper and deeper, obviously there will be more and more questions now. Yeah.
Sure.
I have written down 4 questions. Probably it will lead to more questions. Yeah.
Sure.
First one is more a comment. Yeah. As Sarika is reading this thing, I find it's amazing poetic quality in this. Yeah. We're just concentrating on the meaning of it. I think I do not know if there will be a way to analyze the poetic quality of itself, yeah, or if you can give me a reference to that, it will be of very interesting to me.
So you're saying a reference to the poetry behind the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, the quality of poetry itself is amazing. Actually, when it's just falling on the ear, I can hear that. And
Actually,
we are concentrating. We are just translating it actually. So the poetic quality is actually, yeah, we are discarding it at the moment. Yeah, except Sarika is doing a great job there. So this is my question. There is a reference to somewhere to see, how to analyze the poetic quality alone instead of or in addition to the meaning of it. So this is probably something which is, I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
to put this whole thing in a song, yeah, amazing work, isn't it? And in the same rhythm, so somebody would have thought it, chosen the words, not only the words, yeah. I mean, the sequence of it, amazing work.
It is amazing. What you're saying is true. And in fact, the tune also changes accordingly. If you saw verse 20, the tune was slightly different from the other verses. So, for example, verse 19 will be like, Ya enam veti hantaram yaschaivam manyate hatam ubhau tau na vijanito nayam hanti na hanyate. And then you go to 20, it will be like, न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचित् नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः अजो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे. So it kind of, I'm not the best singer, but yeah, it's beautiful. So the tune is but you talked about poetry, which is much bigger than tune.
Yeah.
I think that requires a separate session, and maybe more knowledgeable people about poetry like you, where one is Sanskrit, the Sanskrit language, the way the words are used, and Sarika is a much bigger expert here than me, and how the words are placed, and how the meaning comes out of the placement of words. It's so beautiful, and then the tune actually adds to it. The Shruti part of it adds to it. So yes, I think, but that's a separate satsang then. We should maybe add a couple of satsang. But it is a song. It is the eternal song. Bhagavad Gita is known to be the eternal song.
Yeah. So we should be thankful to Sarika to be in this satsang with us actually. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
She's doing an amazing job there. Second question I have is about this. See, in one of these things, we are saying that self is unchangeable. Yeah, but I thought this purification process, right, from one birth to the other, and then going into Paramatma, that is the change, Atman part of it, yeah, individual part of it. So I can understand it is indestructible, indissoluble, everything, yeah. But to say it is unchangeable is something which I am confused about, because this modification, this purification, is the change happening to the self. It's not to the body, right? So this is my question, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So actually, in Vedanta, we say that the self is unchangeable. There is no modification. It does not go through the 6 modifications. Is what the concept of Vedanta is. The concept of Vedanta is that you like I talked about the other day. There you are talking about the Videha Mukti. Jivan Mukti and Videha Mukti. Jivan Mukti is where in this life we are leading it in an optimal manner, where we are able to explore the inner divinity that is within us, which is the self. Exploring the self or the inner divinity which is within us. And after having explored, we are able to deal with the aspects of the current life in the right optimal manner. Whereas Videha Mukti is where the self does not need any more births and deaths in that journey. So I understand what you're saying. So in that context, you're saying that the self is also changing and improving over a period of time. But in the context of Vedanta, it is said that it is unchangeable, and the change occurs in the perceived elements of the existence, not in the self portion of it. But yeah, I hear you, and this requires further exploration.
Okay, the third.
It will come, by the way, in Bhagavad Gita later on.
The third question is, actually we know that the body is made up of 5 elements. What is mind and intellect made up of? Is that known, or is that something which will be covered later?
Yeah. So before that, the second part question also I want to address. I don't want to jump the gun. It will be addressed later. So let's be a little bit patient. But we'll know why the self is. Bhagavan talks about why he gives explanations, reasoning, all of that. The third part, yeah, the mind also is made of the 5 elements as mind and the intellect also. Mm-hmm. They are also part of the elemental existence of of the temporary. Mm-hmm. They go away with the body. Okay. They are not there. The mind does not exist. Scientifically, they say that for some point in time, after the body becomes inert, the brain is functioning. For some point in time, the intellect is there. There are signals that are there, but that's only for another temporary period, another ephemeral period. Ultimately, all of them cease to exist. Mm-hmm. So they are part of the elemental world only.
Okay, and the last question for today for me is again this question of dharma. And dharma is relevant for whom? The body, mind, intellect, they are indestructible, or they are only temporary. So I thought dharma is for these things to be in coherence with everything else of the nature. And now we are saying these things are anyway. And if these things are temporary, why is Bhagwan interested in keeping this dharma? Because that should not be of his interest topic. I mean, I'm reflecting my confusion, you know.
Sure, I'm not actually following what you're saying here, but if we go back to, when we covered dharma separately as a topic, so what is dharma? Dharma is, there are different elements in which dharma is also explained. One is the righteousness, doing the right things, and so on. And the other is the basic essence of being is dharma. Like we said that the dharma of the fire is to give heat, is to burn. So without which there is no fire. The dharma of the sun is light and heat. Without light and the heat, sun does not exist. So the basic existence or the element, the cause of which existence is there is dharma. So that is deeply connected to the self. The self is dharmic by nature. The self is the inner divinity which needs to be revealed. It is dharmic by nature, right? So the body, mind, and intellect are the elements that get swayed by the unreal parts of the world, the elemental parts of the world, the experiential parts of the object world. And as that, the experiential part of the object world, as they are resolved one by one, is when, the erosion happens and the final divinity is revealed, which is the ultimate self. The inner nature of the self is dharmic by nature.
Okay, yeah, so that was my question. Yeah, dharma is relevant for the self.
Yeah.
It's not only for the body, mind, and intellect. Okay. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you. Then, in fact, from verse 38 onwards is where we talk about Swadharma. So it's one amongst my favorite portions of the Bhagavad Gita. More than the Atman, the Atma Vidya. For me, the Swadharma Vidya was a lot more enchanting. So, verse 38 onwards, Bhagwan talks very detailed way about Swadharma. We'll cover that in chapter 2. And remember, chapter 2 is a summary. So all of this that we are talking about, he covers in more detail as we go beyond chapter 2.
Srini, I was thinking about this American issue that's going on now, and so much of protest going on.
Right.
So the basic duty of the policeman was just to take him into custody, right? He couldn't have sat on his neck for 9 minutes.
True.
The body, mind, and intellect is got so much of dirt that he could not see that he is not carrying it out.
True. Yep, absolutely. And in fact, even the human being is, pleading. He says, I'm not able to breathe.
Yes.
Even that he ignored. So yes.
So this is a classic case of where we have our set ideas and we have our, filters in place that doesn't do its job. And sometimes we are left with our thoughts which are so real to us that we take action. But those actions, whether they are actually following the dharma, or is it correct, or is it what you were to do? So that is when you clarify. When we do all these things, I feel slowly we get aware of our actions. Like, I read somewhere, stop. That is when you want to do something, first stop. Then T, S is star. S is for stop, T is for thinking, O is for star, A is for action, and R is for reflection. So before taking any step, star.
Stop, think, act, reflect.
Yeah, stop, think, act, reflect. I find it very useful in my conduct. When I remember to do this, then I'm better at making sure that everybody around me, not only myself, I'm able to conduct and put things in perspective for all around me and myself too.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Stop, think, act, reflect. Yeah, I completely agree. Yes, and I mean, one is the heat of the moment, and it was not really a moment, it was much longer than a moment. But what about some of the reactions later on, including, the President of the United States of America? I would say it was a pretty pathetic response from a head of a country, state. So, although they modified it later on, the initial response had much to be left much to be desired. So yes, I think those are the unfortunate aspects of getting completely blinded by the the object world and the elements of the object world.
And that too also, when the leader is not able to give direct or direction, then even the people who are affected, they get so, like how Arjuna is so sad that they behave in a way that is not right.
Yeah,
We
that's
don't
true.
get
Actually, this is you. I will be thinking about this. I never thought about what is going on in the United States in the context of Bhagavad Gita. I'm
this
telling you what's going on in the United States in the context of Bhagavad Gita can be fantastic learning for us.
Yes. That's why we are called true Arjunas. That's why Arjuna is taken as an example, is what I read. Like we are all being taught what is good, what's bad, how we go about things. But at the moment of doing an action, it's what you have accumulated or what you have taken in that reflects your action.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good one. I'll remember that. Stop, think, act, reflect. Anyone else? Any other thoughts?
Yes, can you hear me, Mr. Srinivasan?
Yes, I can hear you.
I have been listening to you with rapt attention, and especially the ease with which you are describing the Samakhya Yoga, the second chapter, in an effortless manner. Samkhya Yoga. Sorry, my Sanskrit is quite poor, and I can't pronounce every sloka like the lady crisply does. So, well, you have done in fact, it's a pleasure listening to you, and also word by word meaning. It is something new to me, and I really appreciate, and I'm very thankful to you, and I hope every weekend I will be with you to enjoy your discourse on Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts, comments? Okay, if there's nothing more, I think we can close for today.
Okay, Srini, bye.
Thank you. Hari Om. We'll see you next
Hari Om,
Saturday.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.